What's up, everybody? So I had promised to do a live Q&A on Friday, and life with a 14-month-old happens. And I wasn't able to do that, but I do want to hop on here and answer the questions that were submitted to me because I had some awesome freaking questions. And I really want to do this once a week just because I feel like, I don't know, everybody can use this information. I like giving back. Yeah, all the things. Give you guys a taste of what it's like to work with me. So, without further ado, I always hate it when people just wait to have people come on to do the live because I think most people watch lives back. So we're just gonna get into it. Hope you appreciate that. Okay, question number one. So I'm gonna read the question, gather my thoughts, and then give you a short blurb of what I think's going on and how you might approach dealing with that in your life and relationships. So here we go. Okay. Why do I always feel so tense and on edge around my spouse, even when there's no obvious reason? This is a great question. And as a lot of you might know, I do a lot of work with regards to nervous system and understanding your body, why you are the way that you are, why you do the things that you do. And a lot of times, if we are feeling on edge all the time, it's because we are detecting for potential threat, and that can potentially lead to what could be called chronic hypervigilance, where it's not safe to be safe. So even though you might be in a safe environment, your body and your nervous system is still not okay to just relax. And a lot of what I do in my work is starting to understand and be aware of why this might be showing up for you so that you can start building the capacity for your body to feel safe, to be safe. So there's number one. Number two, how come I shut down and can't seem to communicate when we're having an important discussion? Another great question. Communication is key, right? And unless you had a really good example of what healthy communication looked like, what healthy rupture and repair look like, a lot of times communication can maybe feel like it's high stakes. And a common response that we potentially have, depending on how our caretakers attune to us and what we were allowed to feel or not feel in those relationships, you can have what's known as maybe a freeze response. So as you're in a communication situation with a romantic partner, let's just say, a lot of times because your heart is on the line, the stakes might feel really high, even though the thing that you're talking about might not be that big of a deal, right? And a natural response that you might have is to shut down. And what we do and what you can do is start to understand and befriend your response to that situation. So if you find yourself shutting down, you can start asking yourself, being aware of that, what are the body sensations that I'm having while I'm experiencing shutdown? What is safe for me about shutting down? In the past, have you felt like you shut down in certain overwhelming situations? Because again, usually people make really good sense and you can start connecting those dots for yourself. Okay, next question. Why do I get irrationally angry over small things my partner does? Can anybody else relate to this? And what I would say is if you catch yourself or after a situation where you get irrationally angry, a common thing is 20 minutes later, you'll calm down and you'll think to yourself, why did I get upset over that thing? And what's really happening is you are in a dysregulated state, maybe outside of your conscious awareness, and you are in what is known as a fight or flight response. And when you're in that response state, a lot of times minor things could be perceived as a threat. Whereas if you were in a more regulated state or a calm state, little things might just roll off your back. And, something that usually bothers you might not even bother you because you're in a regulated state. And again, really understanding how to develop self-control and regulate your nervous system will help you start to identify these things as they come up so you don't irrationally take things out on your partner. Okay, why do I feel so disconnected from my partner, even when we're spending time together? Okay, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that can relate to this. And, a lot of times when you're feeling disconnected, it means that there's like an emotional disconnection or detachment. And usually what we like to start out by doing is to like understand when you're in those feelings, it's like, is this feeling familiar to me? Or is it a new feeling? And start there. Because a lot of times emotional disconnection or emotional numbness or detachment is a learned response based on our history. And when we go through difficult things, like a lot of times it can happen, after a disagreement or a conflict or, hurt feelings or rupture that wasn't repairs, we can disconnect and we don't know how to come back together and repair that rupture. And a lot of that has to do with, again, how was your past history with regards to rupture and repair? Is it safe to repair? Can you trust that the other person is going to come back, take responsibility, and you're going to feel like, the relationship is safe and whole again? Is really what I would say to dive into there. Okay. Why can't I seem to relax and be intimate? There's always this unexplained anxiety. Okay. This is probably a more complicated one that I need more context about. But what I can say about anxiety is a lot of times it has a big and deep impact on physical and emotional intimacy. And a lot of times that is due to nervous system dysregulation. In order to feel safe, to be still, you have to be able to be in that calm state. And if we're in like a hypervigilant response or a stress response, a lot of times that activates our sympathetic system, which is mobilization. So if you are in a fight or flight response, it would make sense to me that you don't feel like you can relax. And there's why I say it's like case by case, because there are a lot. Hey, Stacy, thanks for joining. There are a lot of factors that could put us in that anxious state or that fight or flight response state. And what I have noticed is that usually when we get into it, there's a really good reason for it. And, because I heard you say unexplained anxiety, a lot of times it's just because it's outside your conscious awareness. So when you can make those things and bring them into your conscious awareness, a lot of times that gives you a lot of agency over what's actually going on. And when you have an understanding of what's really going on for you, it really allows you to calm down, right? Because what's more scary than the unknown? It's like the boogeyman in the closet or what's underneath your bed. But when you shine a light underneath your bed or you open the closet, shine a light in there and you realize there's nothing there, or you understand what it is, then all of a sudden it's not so scary anymore and might give you an opportunity to relax and get into those more still activities like being intimate. Okay. What's next here? Okay, why do I always anticipate the worst in my relationship, even when things are going really well? That is a great question. I'm sure nobody else feels like that. It's almost like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop in a given situation. And that would suggest that your hypervigilance or your fight or flight response is activated and you kind of have it's called a hyperarousal or a bias towards activation. One of the things that is common for that is like, again, I always like to start off by going into your history of like, okay, why would that make perfect sense? And a lot of times it's because our nervous system has collected a lot of data over the years that it's not safe to just be safe. It's not safe to just be in that calm, loving relationship. Or maybe you have had relationships where it's been good for a little bit and all of a sudden out of nowhere it's not good, and then it's good for a little bit and all of a sudden nowhere it's not good. And you just because you change relationships and maybe you're not in that relationship anymore doesn't mean that those circumstances or things that happen to you just disappear, right? So again, it's all about developing awareness to what's going on inside of you, how that's showing up, understanding why it's showing up, and that it's probably showing up for a really good reason. When you can start befriending those responses, you're going to be able to really start trusting yourself again and developing good self-trust. And when you have good self-trust and those responses come up, you're able to navigate through them and then come back into a calm state and realize, hey, I am safe. Maybe I don't have to anticipate the worst. Thanks for anticipating the worst, because at some point in time, it was probably really smart to do that. Okay, why do I feel so overwhelmed and helpless when we have relationship problems? That makes good sense. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that can also relate to this, even me at times. And that is because we are, well, let's call it emotionally flooded. A lot of times we are in overwhelm. And it's a really common experience that when you experience a lot of stress or a lot of potential threat, all of a sudden you can go from a fight or flight response where you feel like you have the capacity to actually handle the situation into shutdown. And that is basically what happens when you feel like you don't have the resources to actually handle what is going on. It's too much. So then you shut yourself down, and it's a perfectly good and smart response. The key is to start building capacity to understand what's actually going on when you are in a problem, right? Are there factors that are happening where, what pushes you over the edge to where you feel like you can't handle that? Why has that happened? The situations in your past that have it make sense, that maybe you have past experiences where when you're in a relationship, especially with early caregivers, and there's a problem, it just wasn't solved because you were, let's just say all by yourself. You had to handle it all by yourself. So a lot of times when we're alone or by ourselves, problems amplify because we don't have proper support. We don't have proper, co-regulation through difficult emotions. We learn that those things aren't safe for us to experience. So if we have a relationship issue come up, and it's tied to a certain emotion, and we have a past history of those emotions being too much for you to handle, you're just going to get shut down. Your body's going to say, oh, geez, Jason, we have lots of experience of feeling these feelings, and it's been too much, and it's too painful, and it feels like it lasts forever. We're just going to shut you down. Okay. What do we have here? I did that one. Okay, why do I find myself zoning out or feeling numb when my partner is expressing their feelings? This is a really common thing, I think. Again, I'm a coach, I guess I should just say I'm a coach, not a doctor. So I'm not like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not labeling you with anything, but that sounds a little bit like dissociation, and it's a shutdown response because the emotions around whatever it is that is being brought to you are too big. And what I mean by that is, like, we learn at a young age what things are safe and unsafe, and that information and data gets stored in our nervous system. So if you are in a situation where your partner is bringing you some information with some feelings associated with those particular things, that in your past it's been too big to actually sit with and experience those emotions, a common thing to do would just be like to zone out and check out. And there's nothing wrong with you. I would actually say that's like a really smart response in that situation. Your body has learned that this stuff is not safe. Therefore, what's the smartest thing for me to do, right, is check out. Another common thing that this could show up in, it's like if you're bored, right? A lot of times, like if you're in a situation where there's not enough stimulus and you're just like forced to be in this situation, how many people just start checking out? Next thing you know, somebody asks them a question and like it startles them and brings them back to. It's a similar but different situation. And in a relationship, it usually just involves different kinds of emotions. Okay, why do I have trouble sleeping or relaxing after an argument with my spouse? This is a great question, and actually it has a lot to do with can't seem to be relaxed with being intimate. And what I mean by that is like whenever you get into, an argument or a conflict with your spouse, depending on your interpretation of the situation, can feel like it's a threat, right? It could feel like it's a threat to you, depending on the relationship, obviously, physical threat, emotional threat, a threat to the integrity of the relationship. It just depends on like, again, the context is really important here. So I'm kind of like shooting from the hip with this. But what's important to realize is like when you get into any sort of a confrontation, whether it's with a random person or a person you really care about, a lot of times our body can perceive it as a threat, and it's like a fight or flight. Sometimes you feel like you're really getting into it with your spouse. When the conversation is over, your body just doesn't say, "Oh yeah, the conversation's over." A lot of times there can be like, call it aftershocks of that fight or flight response stuck in your body. And it can be really difficult, especially if there isn't resolution with regards to that argument, that will really prevent you from relaxing and sleeping. Because again, when you're in fight or flight, it's a mobile response. Your body is perceiving a threat. So if your body perceives a threat, it's going to be really difficult to just like relax, come into calm, and want to like sleep. So it makes perfect sense. You can start to develop, some like better relaxation techniques. You can learn to repair more. A lot of times, once there is that repair, it's a natural calming that happens, and fight or flight can be really subsided with good, healthy repair. Okay, why do I feel like running away or escaping when my relationship gets challenging? Yeah, totally makes sense. And again, would to me reflect a fight or flight response. A lot of times, fight or flight isn't just fight. Like a lot of times, if we are worried or scared about something, we can run away from it. And again, depending on how you were raised and what your interactions were, what you learned was okay and not okay, we can develop. Sometimes there's really two main things that can happen. We either get anxious and we are anxiously attached to somebody, or we're kind of hyper vigilant on like, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? Or we can get avoidant. And what I mean by that is it sounds like when things get hard, instead of like wanting to know is everything okay, we're like, hey, I'm out, or I'm going to just avoid this because situations in the past have been too much for me, and it's better if I just like sweep it under the rug or check out or run away from the hard problems, because what I've found is that hard problems don't have any resolution, and the best way to handle that is just leaving. Why do I often feel like I'm just going through the motions with my spouse without actually feeling anything? Okay. This can be common in men and women, but I'd say more so in men. And that's because, feeling your feelings probably hasn't been safe for you your entire life. If you're, culturally, in society, on TV shows and movies, most of the men I talk to that have difficulties like connecting with their spouse and like not feeling anything have been raised in a way where it's like, hey, it's not, suck it up, don't cry. Basically, the only emotion that has been really allowed in some cases is anger. So it would make sense to me if you don't have any experience with being able to communicate feelings, being able to like receive emotions from your wife or partner, that you might feel disconnected and numb, because if those feelings were never allowed, a lot of times like you just shove them away. And when we shove things away, we repress things, a lot of times, they just don't go away. Let's be honest. And when I hear you say like emotionally disconnect and numbing, that would tell me it's like, again, a state of like what we'll call it hypoarousal, which is opposite of hypervigilance, which is more of a shutdown response, which is more of like an avoidant check out, numb out response, which again is like a really smart thing for you to do without the tools and the capacity to be able to navigate, certain emotions, especially in an intimate relationship. It would make sense to me that your body is telling you, hey, I'm just going to check out. So what you want to do is start to build a better relationship and connection with the body sensations and emotions that you're feeling. This can be really helpful to do with a coach, of course, because, going into something basically blind is never a smart thing. But again, the more you gain awareness to it and the more you're able to actually understand what's going on, much like when I talked about, the boogeyman in the closet or what's underneath your bed, all of a sudden it's not so scary. And then you can start to hang in the tension, hang in the pocket without shutting down. Stuff that I do with lots of my coaching clients. Okay. Why do small disagreements with my partner escalate so quickly into major conflict? Now, this has a lot to do with the question that was asked earlier about why do I get irritated over small things my partner does. And it again has all to do with a heightened fight or flight response, a stress response to certain situations. Of course, it's like a matters holistically. Does this happen all the time or just sometimes or just around a certain topic would be my question. If it's happening all the time, that would tell me that you have a really big allostatic load. You're probably outside of your window of tolerance. You have all this emotion going on without really being aware of what it is that's going on. So it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back every time. It's like this little thing that turns into a big thing when really it's about all the stuff that's underneath that you're not addressing. If it's around certain things, that could tell me that you have a certain trigger around a certain topic that maybe your partner doesn't think is a big deal and you don't realize is such a big deal for you. So really like acknowledging like, hey, this is a big deal for me. And your partner being able to respect that and being like, oh yeah, wow, that makes sense why it might be a big deal for you. And then all of a sudden you have a new understanding around this certain issue. And then as a whole, if you can really start to work in practices to help relieve stress from your life, you're going to start to notice, much like I had previously talked about, things that used to bother you might not bother you anymore. They start to roll off your back because you're out of that fight or flight response, that sympathetic activation, and into more of a calm. Why do I sometimes feel a sense of dread or panic when my partner wants to talk about our relationship? Okay, that is super common and again reflects that fight or flight response. You are detecting threat, and in some cases it could be a real thing, right? Or other cases it might be like an overactive sympathetic response or fight or flight response to the situation. And again, an important part of the coaching that I do is we want to make sure that our responses match the situation, right? And what I mean by this is like, you don't want to feel safe in unsafe environments, right? And you don't want to feel unsafe in safe environments. And how this could show up with regards to feeling dread or panic is if you're in a healthy relationship and your partner just wants to bring something to you that is, a need that's not being met and in a way that is healthy and you are dreading that, there's probably something there that you need to address in you. Now, if you're in a situation where your partner is volatile and, always bringing doubt about the relationship, it would probably make sense that you would dread or panic talking about that. So again, without the specifics of the situation, I'm not sure what else I can say about that other than you want to make sure your response matches the appropriate situation. And again, that's stuff that we do in my coaching containers. Okay, why do I often find myself overanalyzing my partner's words and actions even when they tell me everything is fine? And again, this is similar to a previous question about, the hypervigilance. It's like, why am I always worried the other shoe is going to drop? And again, it's a hypervigilant response, which oftentimes makes really good sense depending on your past history. Basically, what's happening is you are always on alert for potential threat, and we know, based on our nervous system, is you are always scanning for threat or safety. So if you have experienced a lot of unsafe environments, then it would make sense that your body would naturally be overanalyzing things. It would make sense if you've been in previous relationships where you haven't been able to trust your partner's words. They've said one thing, done another, and there has been painful emotions connected to those two things. It would make really good sense that you were a hypervigilant person. Now, how to go about changing that is to start acknowledging that your responsibility is, do my reactions match the situation? So if you are in a healthy relationship, but you are still overanalyzing, that would say to me that you are having a situation where you are being triggered by something, you're having a real-time experience of the past in the present, and start to really understand why that is and how that shows up for you. When it shows up for you next time, you are going to be able to be with that situation. Instead of it feeling so real, you can take what is inside of you and be able to make it explicit. Share that with your partner, especially. Let them know that this is what's going on for you. Don't just hold it in, and share it in a way with the knowing hey, I've noticed that I've been really overanalyzing you, and I can understand based on my past history why that might be true. Here's what I need. I need some extra reassurance. Do you feel like can you give that to me? And it would look like this, telling me this, or giving me this, or showing me this, etc. Okay, last one. Why do I feel like I'm not really present during intimate moments with my spouse? We already kind of went over this. And again, it's your connection to intimacy can be affected by so many things, especially with women. You guys live your life being afraid of, in a way, potentially 50% of the population, because they are bigger and stronger than you, and they have probably proven themselves to not be a safe place. So this can or cannot be a potential complicated answer, and it all really depends on your past history. And what I mean by that is even if your partner right now is safe, you could have lots of experiences of unsafe partners and then have it be still really difficult to be intimate with somebody who's really safe. So the work is, of course, right now you already started it by having awareness, hey, I'm not being present when I'm being intimate. It's I'm checking out. And then start to unpack, it's why that might make really good sense. To start working with somebody on understanding more of what's coming up for you. Because if you're checking out, that in some cases might mean that you are going from fight or flight to full-on shutdown. And again, this starts to get really nuanced with regards to your history and your what's happened in your romantic and intimate life. But what I can say is, usually when you start checking out, you start dissociating, your nervous system is basically in a state of overwhelm, and it just dysregulates you and checks you out to protect you from potential harm. And that's really what I can say about that. So what you would do is you start learning how to build capacity to navigate through those difficult emotional and intimate situations, which would normally check you out. You start to hang on to yourself through that. And with enough proof, your body will stop doing that eventually. Okay, that was a lot. That was 15 questions. Hopefully you guys got a lot of good value in that. I'm probably going to take these questions and cut them up and trickle them out. So if you didn't watch this whole video, no worries. But if you're listening to this, you probably did. So Yeah, cool. Thanks for watching. And as always, I do have limited one-on-one coaching spots available. So if this kind of stuff is the stuff that you're looking to work on for yourself, click the link in my bio, book a free call. We can get on a call and we can talk about your specifics and your situation and see if we might be a good fit. So thanks for watching, you guys, and I'll catch you next week.